A while back I did a video explaining the modes of the major scale. If you're not familiar with modes, I recommend checking that video out before watching this one, because this video is going to look at some more advanced topics on modes. So you need a basic understanding first. In this video, we're going to look at what makes a mode major or minor, what makes each mode unique, how to create a modal chord progression, when is a chord progression not modal. So as a reminder, here are the 7 modes of the major scale. So I'm going to start each of these modes from the same note. Let's use C. Some of these modes are considered major, some minor. This all depends on what type of third it has. The Ionian, Lydian and Mixed Lydian all have a major third, so that's 4 semitones up from the root. The Dorian, the Phrygian, the Aeolian and the Locrian all have a minor third, which is 3 semitones up from the root. This makes them minor. Now, the Locrian is slightly different as it has a diminished fifth, giving it an unstable sound. This means it's not used that often, so we're going to set this one aside for now. So if you remember, the Ionian, that's just the major scale, and the Aeolian, that's just the natural minor scale. So that leaves us with Lydian, Mixed Lydian, the major modes, and Dorian and Phrygian, the minor modes. So let's first examine major modes. Each mode has a characteristic tone that gives it a unique tonality, sound, or flavour. We can identify this special tone by comparing it to the major scale or the Ionian mode. So the characteristic note of Lydian is the sharp 4. This is the only note different from the Ionian or major scale. For the Mixed Lydian, it's the flat 7 that makes it unique. For the minor modes, we compare them to the natural minor, or Aeolian. The characteristic note in the Dorian mode is the 6, which is raised a semitone compared to the flat 6 of the natural minor. The characteristic note of the Phrygian is flat 2. You can also put these modes in order of brightness to darkness. So the more intervals that have been flattened in comparison to the major scale, the darker the mode is. And the Lydian has a sharpened interval, therefore it's the brightest. This can come in handy when you're choosing a mode to fit a certain mood, kind of like the way an artist would select a palette of paints. Now we have all that information, we can look at how to build modal chord progressions. Just like the major scale, you can build a chord from each of the scale degrees. For example, in the Lydian mode, we get these chords, and they are made from these notes. And these are just the same chords that you will get from the parent scale of that mode. For example, the parent major scale of C Lydian is G major, and it contains all the same chords. You can create a modal chord progression from these chords, but there is a very strong risk of it sounding like a G major chord progression. If you want it to have a Lydian tonality, then there are 2 specific rules that you need to follow. Rule number 1, most of the chords in the progression must contain the characteristic notes of the mode. Rule number 2, do not use the diminished chord as it contains a tritone interval, which will make it want to resolve back to G major. We call the root chord and the chords that contain the characteristic note primary chords, and the rest are secondary chords and the diminished. And we can call this a tertiary chord. In C Lydian, the primary chords are C major, D major and B minor, as they all contain that F sharp, the sharp 4. So if we use these chords, we will have our Lydian sound. So to demonstrate this, I'm going to use a loop pedal. I'm going to play in 2 bars of C major, 1 bar of D major and then 1 bar of B minor. We could also throw one of those secondary chords in, but I'm just going to stick with these 3 for now. you can do this with Mixolydian, Dorian or Phrygian. Just remember the 2 rules. Rule 1, most of the chords in the progression must contain the characteristic note of the mode. Rule number 2, do not use the diminished chord. And as a side note, if you want to use 7th chords and beyond, then you must make sure that you only use chords that do not contain a tritone. If you're interested in melting your brain even further, then I recommend this book. It's 20th Century Harmony by Vincent Persichetti. It usually has a green dust cover, but I've lost mine. Thank you for watching.